大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello, and welcome to LupinRecap vs. PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I am your host, Lokomoski, and with me is my co-host, Fefner Masamune.
Hello, it's me.
Now, before we get into the episode proper, we're going to do yet another pre-episode discussion question. Now, normally I try to keep these general as far as the episodes go, but still specific to Sentai, and that's going out the window now, because now we're going to talk about character development, and why we prefer it to more or less any other aspect of fiction. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I can go first since you went first last time, after forcing me to choose from my children.
I don't know if that counts, because I did that in 10 seconds, and then you went on for 10 minutes.
So anyway, character development. Characters are pretty much the crux of most given stories. Obviously there are some exceptions, but usually, you have a story, you have the characters, and characters kind of make a thing, because your story doesn't have to be the best, it still has to be interesting, but like, the people moving said story along kinda have to be interesting for the story to move along in any good way. Like, I'm of course a pretty big fan of Fire Emblem, which is pretty infamous for having stories with problems, but having a cast that typically makes up for said problems. That is where the interest lies, and a lot of the impetus is getting you interested in the characters and developing them amongst each other, that sort of thing. And I feel just in general nowadays that's kind of the first thing I look for is character development. Like with Dragon Ball, never was interested in DBZ when I was younger, but I started watching it, and I did get attached a lot due to the characters. Did take a while because I did start with Dragon Ball as opposed to Z, so back then it's just Goku and Bulma and Yamcha, so odd cast there, but I appreciate them, even if maybe they aren't as well remembered as the DBZ cast.
Hi, it's me, the guy who misses launch a whole lot.
Launch.
I don't get invited to most DBZ stuff because of this.
Toriyama, why? What? Just remember launch exists, please.
Bring launch back, coward.
That's all you have to do, just remember she exists, and you're good.
My perspective preferring character development to other things is that everything else just sort of starts to fall away after a certain point. You mentioned plots being like secondary and rely more on character. There's some academic debate on the actual number of plots, but the actual different plots and stories can be reduced to like 6 or 7.
Yeah, there are only 7 stories.
Okay, so 7 is the first one that came up. I'll just read them out.
That's the one I know.
Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Rebirth, Comedy, and Tragedy. And they're cheating on the last 2, but whatever. So with that in mind, there are a lot more than 7 characters. There are definitely archetypes, but as we talked about before, combining different aspects of archetypes makes a completely different feeling character.
Mm-hmm.
The example I'm going to keep going to, because it's really obvious, is Toma, and his stoic nature combined with his impulsive attitude makes her a really weird and interesting character in his role. Also, just in general, I don't know, it's more fun to talk about. It's more fun to think about, oh, how would this character act in this situation, rather than where do you think the plot is going to go? Because once you're finished with something, you can't have that discussion anymore.
Yeah.
Before this podcast started, we were talking about different JoJo characters and like why Abdul should be in more fights.
Yep, Abdul's good.
Hashtag Abdul was robbed.
And, let's see, some other examples. Undertale's a pretty good example. A lot of its, like, plot stuff revolves around characters and how they act. That's neat. And I just finished reading Exit Fate, which is, fairly good, RPG Maker game, based on Suikoden. And I'd say the overall plot's fairly strong, but also, characters, they're an important part of that. Like, the plot wouldn't be as interesting if you didn't have interesting main characters who do cool things that you kind of don't expect but understand.
Now, with Sentai in particular, this is enough of the show that is worth mentioning on its own. Fight choreography and everything involved in that, like, that includes like acquisition of new Zords, how the mechs fight, what mechs are available at what times.
Mm-hmm.
And for this show, I don't really care. Like, the fights are cool, but I don't really care about which mech makes an appearance or who does the finishing blow.
I do think the choreography is pretty good. Choreography is another thing I look for, but, you know, that also ties into characters as the thing. Maybe not their development, but just, like, the way they move is based on their character. It's fairly obvious.
It's, there's probably multiple different terms for these things, but it's not development in the sense of the character growing and changing. It's development in the sense of the author explaining to the audience what this character is like.
Yeah, it's a reflection, and it's also a lot of what we know about Umika thus far.
Yeah, most of her character development has been in how she reacts to the fights, saving civilians, keeping an eye on them, doing goofy things. It's how she's so endearing despite not having a lot of dialogue, really.
Yep. She hasn't had her moment to shine yet, and yet.
Now that that's getting cut out.
What's getting cut out, Loka?
Nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
That thing you just said?
All of our dialogue. Anyways, let's move on.
I'll never let you escape your sins.
With that discussion out of the way, let's move on to the episode summary, if you don't mind, Fefner.
Alright, so, episode 6, Something to Protect. I don't think there's a lot of variation on that one, right?
I think overtime translated as, what is it that you protect? But yeah, that's just
Damn.
a different way of that's just phrasing it as a question.
Can you phrase it as a question without asking a question? Anyway, we left off last episode with a whole lot of sad. Here, we pick up with Degranio, we'll say confronting Destra on his secret meetings. I say confronting with obvious quotes because it's Degranio. Degranio doesn't care. Instead, he's intrigued to know that Destra's informant is a gangler named Zamigo. We then cut to Zamigo, inconspicuously walking through a crowd and whistling. And yes, this is the ice gangler that we've seen before.
I love his design so much.
God.
It's like a legitimately cool and interesting design, even though it is not useful as a human disguise at all.
It's not, but it's very, I want to say Drifter-esque, which is, I think, gonna be pretty fitting to him.
His face at least looks like a human.
Yeah.
Which is more than can be said about most of the other gamblers.
Which
I feel bad, because those are humans playing them, but they don't look human.
He's an anime rival, for sure, but does blend in decently well. So, Destra tells Degranio that Zamigo has an extensive operation in the human world. Degranio then replies that it would be amusing if he attempted to become his successor. Quick break, I guess, to say, I don't know if my prediction last episode was quite right, because I still feel this can go a few ways. Because he could just be saying, it'd be amusing if he could attempt to become my successor. He could be happy for him. But also, Degranio strikes me as the type who would just find it funny if, like, his worst enemy succeeded him. He'd be fine with that sort of thing. But
Well, we do see later other ganglars treat Zamigo as a superior, or at least someone they can talk to without getting in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Zamigo is supposed to be part of the organization.
Alright.
No, he just doesn't listen to anyone.
Yeah.
He's that one guy that's, never listens to anyone, but you keep him around because he's really good at his job.
Yeah.
But really, you should just fire him and get used to working without him because it's going to be better for everyone in the long run. But you're scared of getting rid of your best talent.
Yeah, I just found Degranio's just, like, it's hard to say, like, body language when he wears a costume, but just his body language and sort of the way he reacts to it, it's kind of hard to get a read on him.
Yeah, because he doesn't care. I think he says, "I don't care" in every scene he's in.
I must remind you that I do not care.
Take a look at him, because he could not care at all.
He had his back against me the entire time. Like he doesn't even really care about me. Like when he sang that song, he doesn't even really care about me. So, we're done with hell now. Let's go see what's going on with the Phantom Thieves. It's a busy day at the restaurant, which naturally means that Kairi has left Umika and Tuma to do all the work while he goofs off.
I thought you said we were leaving hell. But now we're back to a very personal hell.
We've left the literal hell. So Umika's tired, but Tuma's resigned to it by this point. Neither of them believe that Kairi's out there doing anything useful, like searching for Peggy. At Police HQ, Jim Carter is searching for Peggy's human form. A still injured Tsukasa asks an also injured Sakuya as to where Kaichiro is. Sakuya doesn't know either, because Kaichiro is off being extremely intense in the park. He overhears a couple of people talk about the Pat Rangers, but both of them agree that the Phantom Thieves are way cooler. Kaichiro continues brooding, flashing back to the beatdown that Red gave him. Kaichiro furiously crushes a can in his hand as Kairi happens by. Kairi, a jackass and an idiot, decides he's going to try and gather information on Peggy by antagonizing Kaichiro.
But first he makes the biggest grimace on his face, which is also how I react when I see a policeman.
But as he walks over, Kaichiro shoots up and just shouts, "Damn you, Phantom Thieves!" while swearing that he'll win next time. As he does.
I remember he used to joke about that. Of Kaichiro just randomly screaming that at no obvious stimuli. And then he did it. I forgot he did it in the actual show.
Yep. So we cut over to Police HQ again, where Jim has located Peggy in his human disguise. He calls Kaichiro, who rushes to the scene, and then it's intro time. We come back to Peggy minding his own business when the cops catch him in a pincer attack. Peggy decides his human disguise is done, so he transforms, as do the Pat Rangers. Peggy doesn't have much of a chance, though, and the Pat Rangers seem like they'll be getting an easy win today. Except Ichigo stops them. He insists they draw out the fight in case the Lupin Rangers appear. And because Ichigo delays the fight to tell his partners to let him do a dumb thing, Peggy gets in a sword beam that knocks all three of them over and makes his escape. Of course, Tsukasa is furious at Kaichiro for ruining the fight for his own selfish reasons, which means it's time for the dramatic slap. It gets a double take and everything.
I really like the facial expressions on both of the actors in this. Because there's this weird back and forth where first Kaichiro is angry, and then it cuts to Tsukasa, who is not angry on her face, and then it cuts back to Kaichiro, who is trying to figure out what Tsukasa is thinking.
So Tsukasa asks Kaichiro if he's forgotten his mission, and the two stare each other down. Sakuya, in the background, seems to have a stomachache.
Mom, Dad, why do you fight? I don't like it when you guys fight.
So, while the cops are off squabbling, Peggy has put on his human disguise again. He exhaustedly limps along as he reconsiders his old disguise and thinks it's time for a new one when Ghosh arrives on the scene. Peggy begs for her help because the upper management just doesn't understand how important a tactical retreat is. Ghosh, naturally, has something more in mind for Peggy than just a new disguise. We'll see what wacky shenanigans came from that later. For now, drama. Kaichiro,
First,
a little less
before we get
intense.
too far away from this scene, did you mention where Peggy was going to get his new disguise from?
Yes, he was going to go back to Zamigo.
I think it's important we establish it's Zamigo specifically. Because now I get to go into my theories that have not yet been confirmed or denied by the canon. At the end of the episode, though.
Zamigo's just got a whole lot of human costumes. It's fine. So, for now, drama. Kaichiro, a little less intense and more just confused, asks Tsukasa why she slapped him. She tells him of the day they were assigned to the Ganglar department. Both of them were at awe at their new job, and Tsukasa mentioned how good the pay was. Kaichiro then asked her if she had a goal. He didn't think ill of her for wanting to earn a living, but he also told her, "Don't forget the responsibility of accepting the power of the global police." However, present Kaichiro can't recall what he said after that, which is surprising because I think most protagonists would be fine with just that first line on its own. Back at the restaurant, Kairi is bragging about how mad Kaichiro was. Umika is impressed that Kairi may have been trying to do something useful, but Tuma still knows that he was blowing them off. And of course, by now, the restaurant has emptied out, so there's not much work to do. Until Sakia comes in, that is. As he takes a seat, he mentions getting away from a bloodbath, which gets the most suspicious, or at the very least extremely strange, reaction from Kairi. Kairi is very interested in said bloodbath, and Sakia tells him that Tsukasa slapped Kaiichiro. All three Phantom Thieves are interested all of a sudden, though Umika and Tuma immediately assumed that there was a fallout from a date. Sakia almost continues explaining the situation, except he realizes that maybe it's not the best idea to talk to civilians about this. So he just leaves a very disappointed Kairi with a vague hint that it was a conflict of opinions. We end the scene with Kairi being extremely smug.
My only note for this scene is Sakia, I swear to God, in all lower caps.
That's all you need, really.
Oh no, wait! I didn't recognize this was from the scene. I have another note. Umika looks so pained every time. Every time he talks to her, just the worst grimace.
Yeah. Short spoilers, we might be getting a resolution to that next episode. I don't know, I've only seen the episode preview, but I do hope they address that at some point. Because Sakia's doesn't mean ill, but Umika's definitely super uncomfortable around him.
Some of us have a very low tolerance for this character archetype.
He's too enthusiastic. So the scene returns to Peggy, who is, oddly enough, in human form. It doesn't last for long, though, as he uncharacteristically transforms in the middle of a crowd and shows off his 2 new arm blades. He then proceeds to launch a few arm blade beams, causing rampant destruction, and I assume probably kills a few people as well. We don't see that, though.
I used to be the guy known for running away. Now I'm a mass murderer.
Yeah, it's actually relatively subtle, but yeah, that's what Ghosh did. She made him more aggressive.
And gave him those nice blades.
Yep, he's got 2 swords, and they're both now attached to his arms forever. Before, it was just a normal sword that you had to pick up and carry and swing.
Traded in my fish blade for these sweet things. I don't even know how to describe them.
But, yeah. I guess, wait, in the last episode they did describe him as a murderer, but not a murderer like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that... And I remember going like, wait, they call him a murderer? I don't remember that.
Yeah, so...
I guess he's always been a murderer. Now he's just better at it.
Well, before it could... Like, again, I think you mentioned that it was different depending on the subs, but it was probably just, every once in a while, when he has the opportunity, he'd kill someone. Real casually, like. But yeah, now, super aggressive. That's the important part. So, we see the cops leaping to action, and that includes Sakia, who has to quickly pay for his meal and leave. Before Sakia is out the door, Tuma asks if it's a Ganglar, and Sakia assures the group that the global police will defeat him. But his small fist pump strains his hand a bit, so, good luck with that.
We have this all in hand. Fuck. God.
So with Sakia gone, the thieves plan on giving chase. Also, I know this is such a pointless detail, but I do just love Sakia paying for the meal. And then just like at the end, as he leaves, Tuma gives him change. I don't know why that detail jumped out at me when I rewatched the episode, but...
Because you expect Toma to keep the change. Expect Toma to charge it. No, he charged Sakia double, but gave him the change back so he wouldn't suspect anything.
So the cops again confront Peggy, who still isn't interested in fighting them. Nonetheless, the cops Kaisatsu change, and we get the full scene this time. Alright, and it's also Potomen time. Can't forget that. But just as the fight starts, Red jumps dramatically into the scene, and the Lupin Rangers rush in guns blazing. Oh right, they also had to pose while introducing themselves, even though they've already started to fight. I love it. It's just... Lupin Blue. As he is just punching a man in the face.
I love that he's doing the same pose he does in the Henshin transformation, just with a person there.
It's so good. And also, I feel like he gets the least distracted by punching a dude. Like, Umika's more into the punch. She's sort of like, Lupin Yellow, and just does half the pose. Tuma has time to do the whole thing.
Their group shot, they pose slightly differently, or at least Kyrie does. He normally, like, stands up and puts one of his arms in the air, but here he's, like, Captain Morganing on a mook.
So
I think yellow and blue are doing the same pose, but I don't really know.
So, Red then throws a motherfucker at a motherfucker, but Peggy dodges and charges the thieves. The whole...
Hey, Kate, remember when you did this? I could do this too.
Just not as well.
It's not as memorable or funny as hell, but I can do it.
So, the whole two-sword thing throws the Phantom Thieves off slightly, but they're not deterred. Sangu tries to prioritize taking down Peggy, but Blue jumps in and gets in the way, and actually manages to keep both her and Nigu at bay on his own. Meanwhile, Ichigo finishes off some mooks, only to be confronted by Red again. Red tries to goad him into a fight, and Sangu tries to get him to focus. While Ichigo struggles to figure out what he's fighting for, Red decides to instigate the fight and kicks him over. Ichigo tries to fight him off, but finds himself outmatched again. Nearby, Peggy manages to shove Yellow out of the way. Seeing two easy targets, he launches two spinning blade beams. With little time to react, both Reds manage to see the attack coming thanks to their partner's warnings. Red dodges out of the way, Matrix style of course. Ichigo, however, jumps in front of the attack and halts both energy blades, taking a ton of damage in the process. The attack launches him backwards and explodes, which nearly crushes Ichigo with debris from a nearby stairway. When the Pat Rangers look to see if their leader is alive, they see why Ichigo halted the attack instead of dodging. Hiding behind one of the stairway's pillars is a mother and daughter who had tried to find cover during Peggy's attack. Nigu and Sangu rush over to help the two civilians run over to safety and get the certainly very heavy rock off of Ichigo's shoulders.
Okay, prop issues aside, this is my favorite scene in this episode and one of my favorite scenes in the show.
It's an amazing scene.
I wanted to point out something that I heard and looked for when we watched it and didn't see, but I noticed it when I rewatched the episode earlier today. During Ichigo and Red's fight, there is a point where Ichigo is looking at that staircase and the camera slows down a bit, it's supposed to be a beat in the fight, but nothing happens. He just looks at the staircase, and the suit actor tenses up.
Oh, dang.
So Ichigo sees them before any of this goes down, which is why he doesn't jump out of the way. It's not like he saw them off screen. We see him see them. We just don't know until we watch the episode 5 times, I think, for me.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Dang.
It's only really noticeable because of the slow-mo.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't slow down, it would have been he tensed up too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a really, really good, really nice detail, and I'm sure somebody noticed the first time they watched it and felt really proud of themselves.
But yeah, so it's just a good scene in general. And also, man, Kaichiro kind of gets fucked up a bit. Like, when he's getting hit, you see smoke coming off of the blades. And also, as we'll see in a second, when we see Kaichiro unsuited, bleeding fairly badly. He's probably had the worst injuries on the show thus far, and we ended the last episode with everybody bandaging up, which was already more than we'd seen before.
Yeah, those suits only do so much. Turns out getting hit with dual blade boomerangs thrown into a staircase that then explodes and falls on top of you might be a bit too much.
So, it's at this point that Kaichiro remembers what he had told Tsukasa on the day they were assigned to their positions. What we have obtained is power meant to protect the people. We must not abuse it. Shame cops in real life couldn't acknowledge this. Cough, cough, cough.
If only.
So, as the lyrical theme kicks in, a very injured Ichigo grabs his gun and realizes that he's not fighting to protect his pride, he's fighting to protect people. Again, real-life cops, come on. It's then that Good Striker flies in out of nowhere, because apparently he just has character development sense. Goody then manages to trip Peggy, impressive, and he also steals the bike from Red and tosses it over to Ichigo. The Lupin Rangers are pissed, of course, but before Blue can tear a plastic toy apart, they hear Ichigo preparing a special attack. Kaichiro equips the bike to his Versus Changer, and the thieves realize they have but precious seconds to make sure the collection piece isn't blown to smithereens. Instead of launching the vehicle, Ichigo activates a Kaisatsu boost and prepares to fire. The thieves grab Peggy before he can run away and enter a safe combination 0, 2, 8 and manage to grab his treasure. Jack leaps like lightning. Ichigo's biker repulsion cannon is fired, and Red ducks out of the way the second before the attack lands, and his cape gets a little frayed in the process. Anyway, an energy wheel tears through Peggy, and he dies.
Flies through the air, enters the safe, then starts to get bigger as he carries Peggy into the sky and explodes.
He is dead now. Ichigo collapses to the ground, the stress of wheel taking its toll. Red looks over at Ichigo, completely unconscious, and his friends trying to wake him up. Red decides that he's lost the battle, probably because Ichigo has friends who care about him, because they're reciprocating the respect he gives them. I don't know, maybe you want to try that at some point, Kairi?
Kairi will never learn how to be friends.
Oh, well.
He is a sarcastic, funny jackass, that's it.
For some reason, Degranio decides he'll give Peggy one final shot, because, ironically, he has the patience of a saint. Gauche
I'm
heads...
surprised Destro didn't say anything about that. Gauche, give him another chance, Destro. I have given him several chances.
He has fucked up so many times, my dude.
And that's only counting the chances I gave him after this stupid competition started. If we're counting the stuff back when he was my henchman, hoo boy!
Oh boy, I've got stories. So, anyway, Gauche heads down to Georgia and makes Peggy big, and he responds by blowing up basically the entire battlefield. Not, like, threateningly so. The Rangers who were conscious before are still conscious, but the Pat Rangers realize they need to get their boss to safety. And since they're out of the picture, the Lupin Rangers decide it's time for a Kaiser fight, even if they are mad at Goody. The Lupin Ranger lyrical theme plays this time as Big Peggy threatens to just bring the whole dang robot back to Degranio. The Lupin Rangers have some...
Where's he gonna keep it, Peggy? Where's he gonna keep this robot? In the dining hall? Just set it out in the front lawn like a giant statue?
And then every episode you just see the Lupin Kaiser there.
Just to shame the Lupin Rangers for losing the robot.
Alright, so the Lupin Rangers have a bit of difficulty fighting against Big Peggy's sword beams, so Red decides to change things up and launches the Cyclone. The left arm is exchanged for the new vehicle, and the Lupin Rangers are able to fight better because they punch with rotors now? I mean, before the main problem was that Big Peggy had enough distance to launch some effective attacks, so I would have thought the point of changing the arms would have been to, like, block the energy by spinning the helicopter's rotors or something? But no, they're just in front of them all of a sudden.
It's just stronger now.
We said it's stronger, so it's stronger.
Well, they do have enough mastery of wind to pick him up and hold him in place while they shoot the hell out of him.
Yep, so more importantly, we get a cooler finishing move, one which has the fantastic attack name, Good Feeling Tornado. And Peggy is held in the air as the Rangers prepare the final shot, Good Striker Rapid Fire Blowaway Shot. As Peggy is trapped in a tornado, the Lupin Kaiser fires its machine gun. Big Peggy begs Degranio to help him again as he explodes. Gauche made him braver, but I guess he's just as pathetic. With the battle over, the thieves can yell at Goody for taking one of their collection pieces and giving it to the police. Goody assures the group that it's okay because he's footloose and fancy-free before throwing a flash bomb and making his escape. As Goody...
That's not a joke. We should point out, that's not a joke. He actually causes a really bright flash and then runs away.
He just fucks off out of there.
I know we love goofs and we love describing things in inherently goofy ways, but like, yeah, he just fucking pocket sanded the entire Lupin Ranger team and ran away.
So, as Goody does his best to go his separate way from the Lupin Rangers, the camera pans down, and we hear somebody laugh. It's Amigo, and this anime rival-ass man is chiding both Peggy and Destra. But mostly Peggy. He takes a bite out of a chunk of ice and whispers, "So cold." Oh, right, and also he froze the table he was sitting at.
Also, we've been calling it ice. Did you notice he had a bag full of those things?
I did not know.
I'm not sure if they're actually ice, they may just be ice-shaped. I mean, still, it's fucked up that he would lead us to believe he eats just plain ice with his front teeth.
Just takes a big chunk out of ice without peeling it first. I mean, come on. Back at the restaurant, Kairi shoves the cyclone in Kagure's face and asks him if they can keep it. Kagure agrees since they're able to use it and it will help them in future robberies. When asked about the bike, Kogure assures the group that it's fine to be patient, and that the Ganglar pieces are more important. It's really weird that Kogure is actually kind of agreeable. Still don't trust him, but at least he's patient.
It just makes you guess what his actual game is.
So yeah, well, whatever his long-term scheme, apparently it is long-term. He's fine with it taking a while. So, at Police HQ, Kaichiro apologizes for his earlier mistake with Peggy, but Director Hilltop is just glad he managed to get the bike back and offers him sweets. Tsukasa and Sakia mention their surprise at the thieves leaving them alone at the end of the fight, which causes Kaichiro to look over to the extremely good poster of the Phantom Thieves. He remembers Red telling him that they were Phantom Thieves because they had no choice, and he wonders who Red is under the mask. But that's such a good poster though, right?
Oh yeah, I love those caricatures so much.
There's also a Gangler one that doesn't get focused on in this episode, but I saw it briefly, which I also thought was pretty good at the time, and I hope they do focus on it at some point.
Just can you imagine these three going to elementary schools don't trust the Lupin Rangers. And all the kids are but there's three kids dressed up as Lupin Rangers.
They just cannot bring Kaichiro there because he will just melt in fury if he sees kids dressed up as the Lupin Rangers.
But anyways, that's the episode concluded. Now I go on to the part where I'm supposed to talk about stuff.
Wait, didn't we say we'd do the Ganglar stuff first just so I could get that out of the way?
That's correct, because it felt weird to me to do the Ganglars after I do the real analysis
The
stuff.
interesting parts. So
Peggy.
Yeah, more Peggy. I think it's
That's it, we're done.
that he got more aggressive and he got a bit of a design change. There's that. Yeah, I kind of like his giant design and how he looked like he would have fought, and I do kind of wish they put more thought into how that fight went down. But yeah, it is pretty much just the Lupin Rangers are doing well now. They switched out arms, so they're good.
Yeah. I do think it's important that this episode establishes Ghosh can make Ganglar stronger without her collection piece.
Yep, and they don't have to be big either. That's just, usually the most helpful thing.
She's mentioned doing operations before, so maybe she somehow surgically attached these blades. I mean, it doesn't look it, but I don't know what else she would have done.
Yep, and I guess it's also kind of neat that his ability was one that he actually used a lot in human form and a little bit as Ganglar form, but mostly he used his natural talents.
Honestly, he had to last 2 episodes with that collection piece power, didn't he? You can't make the guy who runs away and then not have him run away and live.
Yeah.
I should point out the collection piece's name, Jack Leap Like Lightning. I know this one. This is a reference to Jumping Jack Flash by the Rolling Stones.
Yep.
I really like that song, so I wanted to make that reference super clear.
Alright, so yeah,
I think for the ones that aren't literal title appropriations, I will point them out just because, it may be obvious to me and to Fefner, but it's not necessarily obvious to the listener.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not gonna hurt.
Alright, so yeah, that's Ganglar. It's Peggy again.
Done. Never have to talk about him again.
Yep, because he's very dead.
So for this episode, there is a strong focus on two themes. The first being characters making mistakes, and the second being redemption, specifically of those mistakes.
Yep.
So let's take a look at redemption in general, because I feel like this is one where it's really, really, really easy to screw up.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned JoJo earlier, and I'm going to be... But for an example of a character redemption gone horribly, horribly wrong, I'm just going to say the name Von Stroheim and not talk about him anymore, because he sucks. Stroheim was a character introduced with the general, like, evil dog-kicking bullshit that a lot of anime villains and manga villains do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he suddenly joins the good guys with literally zero explanation.
It's pretty much just there's somebody tougher than he is, so gotta help him.
It's really bad. It's really poorly explained. And I wish he just had like a twin brother who was exactly like him in every way but wasn't a piece of shit. Or something bullshit like that.
One other character from JoJo that I wasn't great with was, oh shoot, who was the girl with Love Deluxe? I forget her name.
Yukaku?
Yeah. Her first episode was super uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think maybe Araki was trying to do a thing of like stands drive people crazy at first, so she was reacting really poorly to having a stand, and this isn't how she normally acts, I promise, I swear. But it didn't really come across, and I had to invent that whole cloth afterwards to justify reading part 4 anymore.
Yeah, that first episode is just super uncomfortable, and then it tries to redeem her in a kind of bad episode.
Part 4 had a lot of problems with that. Remember the guy who tried to get Koichi's mother to commit suicide, and then he's just friends with everyone now?
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Araki's really bad with redemption arcs. God, no wonder part 3 just had people be brainwashed. Like, how the hell else do you redeem these characters?
I mean, the guy with the lock was at least had information, so he was useful. And then there was the kid with Surface, who was still kind of a shit, and later Rohan just freaks him out, so it's not really a redemption so much as he's kind of friends with everyone, but then...
It's weird that they don't just kill him.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of fucked up, and like, he's not going to go anywhere nice. But for maybe a contentious example that isn't like entirely hated or entirely accepted, in Revolutionary Girl Utena, there is a character named Saionji who is introduced as a domestic abuser piece of shit. And by the end of it, and I won't go into the details, but the show suggests that he might be able to move on from this and become a better person.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I come to my theory that redemption has to be very fact-specific. You have to look at what this character has done and what they need to do in this world to make up for it.
Yeah.
So my example for Saionji has been, he's allowed to live his life and be a better person, but he should never look at Anthe again.
Yeah.
Anthe being his girlfriend he was abusing. He's
Yeah.
allowed to grow as a person and become better, but she should never expect Anthe's forgiveness.
Yeah. Like, Saionji's life was kind of fucked up, and he was a victim of abuse as well. Not that that makes it an excuse. You can't just say, hey, this person also had trouble growing up.
Yeah, it provides context and explanation, but it doesn't automatically solve all the problems.
Yeah, it just means that Tuga's more irredeemable. Fuck that guy. He's never getting better.
But anyway, so we can actually talk about the show we're talking about.
Yes.
This is a pretty good short redemption arc for Keiichiro.
Yeah.
Part of it works because the screw up and the redemption are in the same episode, so we aren't left with a week to stew over his mistake.
Yeah, and also, it's not, like, it's clearly a mistake, and it's a pretty bad one, but it's not world-ending, nobody gets killed. Like, the Pat Rangers have been knocked over before.
Yeah, if they just shot Peggy right then and there, he wouldn't have attacked those people later.
Yeah.
So, Ichigo's responsible for a little mayhem and destruction. Not as responsible as Peggy is, but still somewhat responsible.
Yeah.
But the fact that he realized those people were under the staircase during his revenge duel and then more or less immediately abandoned it to save them is a good way of showing that, like, he's really remembering and knowing what he is supposed to be doing
And
in
also,
his position as a government official.
he wasn't super into the revenge duel in the first place anyway. Like, by that point, he was already reconsidering. It was Red who was super aggressive there.
And you can also tie in the way he's making his mistake to his motivation that he rediscovers by the end of the episode. He wants to beat Red, not just to beat Red, even though that's what he thinks at first. He wants to do it so he can prove that he has the power to save people.
Yeah.
Because if he can't beat Lupin Red, and Lupin Red decided to hurt someone, there's nothing he could do. And then by the end, saving those two people makes him realize that, no, I don't have to beat Red. I'm still strong enough to save people with what power I have, even if I can't beat that fucker in a fight.
Yeah, Red still seems to just be better at him than fighting, which is interesting, actually. Just the fact that Kyrie is better in a fight than a trained cop. Well, at least when they have suits on. I don't know if he could beat him in a fist fight. That's still up in the air.
I don't know if Kyrie could beat anyone in a fist fight. Look at him.
I don't know. I'm now considering just fight Lovin' Punk as one of Kyrie's just unsavory backgrounds. Though then again, he could be fight loving and not be good at fighting.
Oh god, every Friday I go out and get the shit beat out of me for fun.
I'm not owned, I shout.
Only pretending to be owned. But before we get too far off, I want to at least mention, I'll stop myself from going into a whole diatribe about it. People can have ridiculously long memories when it comes to fictional characters making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to go into too specific details, but there are definitely people who still remember this episode and treat it as a reason to keep hating Keiichiro now that we're up to episode, 37? And still hold it over his head as if he didn't overcome this problem right here, right now, in this episode.
Yeah, that was quick, honestly. It was a really good moment, too. He fucks up badly, and noticeably badly, but then he makes up for it. It's fine.
Now, I don't want to insinuate that this is his worst, because we have episodes to go. But assuming this is Keiichiro at his worst, he's still not really intolerable, is he?
No, I can still tolerate him.
Admittedly, if it had gone on for longer than this episode, maybe not.
Absolutely, yeah. Honestly, if he were just spending several episodes being like, I'm gonna fight Red, that would have sucked.
It's also really interesting that this is how this phase of the rivalry is resolved. It's not, Red wins one, Ichigo wins one. It's Red wins one, Ichigo calls off the fight to save people and then kills the gangler. And Red's like, well, that counts as a win for him, I guess.
We'll say it's a draw. You got the moral win. It's fine.
This does set up a theme for Pot Ranger wins, in where it's less flashy and cool as a significant Lupin Ranger victory, but it's a win you can feel better about.
Yeah.
It sets off those catharsis feelings.
It's emotionally sound.
Yes, thank you. It's emotionally satisfying and sound. And those are the main things I wanted to talk about in this episode.
Alright,
but
so...
I also wanted to mention my theory that I won't say it's been confirmed or denied by episodes that exist right now, and of course there are episodes to go, but we learned one little super important thing about Zamigo. He is the one person you go to when you need a human disguise. Now, what else do we know about Zamigo?
He murdered a whole lot of people.
Yeah, so where do you think he gets those disguises?
Well, fuck.
He kills people and then gives those... not corpses, because he doesn't leave corpses, but he gives those appearances to other ganglars. That's the theory. Now let's go one step further. What do we know about Kyrie's encounter with him specifically? He ignored Kyrie and went for his brother. My theory is that was because he had a contract to kill Kyrie's brother to get him as a disguise. I cannot wait for the episode where Kyrie has to kill a gangler that sometimes looks like his brother.
I mean, won't be as bad as the episode where Tuma sees a gangler that looks like his fiancé. Oh god.
I mentioned Kyrie's brother specifically because that's why did he kill Kyrie? Who the hell wants to be Kyrie? Kyrie's brother, though, he's an upstanding person, I think. At this point, we don't really know, but we can assume.
More upstanding than Kyrie. Low bar, I know. But I guess, with that, I've been wanting to mention, I think last week I did place Kyrie last of my favorite characters, right?
We change those every 5 episodes. You don't have to.
I mean, I just want to specifically know, did I have the right gut reaction? It was either him or Umika, because Umika hasn't gotten a lot of, character development thus far. But I feel like Kyrie would definitely be at the bottom now, because, man, Kyrie in this episode is, well, kind of the opposite of Kaiichiro. Whereas Kaiichiro, initially pretty mad about his encounter, spends a bit of time brooding, but at the same time, he also learns from the experience and grows from it. Kyrie, however, does not. He's a little broody at the start of the episode, but the moment he picks up on Kaiichiro being mad, he uses that to make himself feel better. He's that kind of person. So, rather than dwell on what Kaiichiro told him the other night, he is just going on and on about how mad he made Kaiichiro. And then, of course, there's that one moment where he's the one who just casually walks over and wants a duel from him. And neither of the Lupin Rangers stop him, because they're probably just resigned to it.
So I won't pretend to know what your tastes are. So it's hard for me to say, do you have the right gut reaction? I will say this, 37 episodes in, I don't hate any of the Ranger characters.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm sure that he is going to improve over time. But, this is definitely Kyrie's low point, and it's extremely mean-spirited.
I will say, I forget the exact episode number, but roughly episode 37, Kyrie is currently my favorite.
Alright. I mean, it would make sense.
I don't know if they specifically address the problem you're having, but they do introduce new things with him that make me really love his dynamic with more or less everyone.
Alright, so I'm definitely interested in seeing that, but it is pretty interesting also that, they are making the main character this much of a shit.
I think he's supposed to be appearing, childlike.
Oh, definitely.
This didn't bother me as much as it bothered you, and I'm trying to figure out why.
No, he just spent the episode being a dick and gloating about it instead of actually looking at his own problems. And again,
and at the end he got shot.
I know he is going to improve over time. It's not that I don't trust this show to make him develop, but it is interesting that they made, the character who is essentially the main character. He's the main Lupin Ranger. The Lupin Rangers are the stars here. He has the most to overcome, I think. The Lupin Rangers in general, I feel are probably going to develop more over time, because the Pat Rangers kind of already have their shit together, even when they don't.
Honestly, they're fairly strong characters. I remember in the first episode we said they were very one-note and it was hard to talk about them, but it's only episode 6 and I already feel like they're pretty strongly developed.
I like them a lot, but they do bounce back quickly from a lot of things. But also they're, on a whole I think older than the Lupin Rangers, right?
More or less, that would make sense.
Yeah, and also, they've been through school, they're cops, they've trained themselves, they're fairly emotionally ready, and they have a good support network. The Lupin Rangers are mostly teens, except Tuma, who is a young adult who lost his fiancée, and now he's just kind of mad at everything. And they have no support network, and they just have a lot of problems because their connecting thing is that their loved ones died. So, none of them are doing great.
None of them are having a great time right now.
Yeah, so I think just in general, the Pat Rangers are very, quick burn in the way they're developing thus far. You get points, they're resolved. We learn more about them, they learn about themselves, they're able to deal with their issues. Whereas the Lupin Rangers, even Tuma, he's the first ranger we sort of learned more about, but he hasn't faced his problems as much as everyone else has. Though again, I guess this goes back to him being the adult. He has thought back to the time with his fiancée, and he let some of the lessons he learned from her apply to his current life. And also that sometimes you don't just have to rob the police. Maybe it's better to not do that.
You can always rob them later. They're not going anywhere.
Take the slow road, Tuma. It's fine.
Talking about the Red Ranger's specific reactions actually makes me think about this episode slightly differently. It now becomes of how to take away the right lesson, whether you win or lose in a situation.
And that is one
Kyrie
thing.
won, but then by the end of the episode, he lost the bike. Goody did more to the Ganglar than Red did.
Yep. And
he's and now he respects a cop. Now he respects a cop. That's the worst thing.
ah, dang it. It's fantasy cops, it's fine. It's fantasy cops, it's fine.
Just keep saying that. That's going to be our tagline for this podcast.
It's fantasy cops, it's fine. But yeah, Kyrie does at
Well.
least recognize that at the end, so it's not like he's, it's not that he doesn't connect at all, or that he completely ignores his own issues.
He has that slight moment of realization at the end that I guess I thought was enough when I watched this episode. Like, I tried to dunk on the cop, and then Goody beat up the Ganglar, stole from me, gave it to the cop, and the cop shot me. I think we're even now.
Yeah. He can, of course recognize that it's important to save civilians, because he can be a dick, but, he doesn't like random people getting killed.
Yeah, we can't rely on Umika all the time because she didn't see them. Man, I don't think they cut to Umika when they reveal there are civilians there, because that would have been a good time to just have her go, oh god!
She did kind of get tossed off by Peggy. She was, fighting directly against... she was fighting directly against him. He threw her off. That's when he attacked the Reds, and she was more worried about warning Red about the oncoming attack. Though also, quick note about Umika, because now that you bring up Umika not seeing a thing, man, I've realized that Kyrie does just kind of place a lot of responsibility on her. Tuma as well, but Tuma's the cook, and he's just chill with it anyway. But
Tuma's equipped to handle a situation.
Yeah, Umika's the one who has to deal with all the customers, and she just looked exhausted in that first scene.
There is a reason I referred to that scene as hell.
Yeah, Umika's just going between people, and then when she gets over to the kitchen, she's just about ready to collapse. And I know that, she's more of a parallel with Sakia, since they're both sort of the younger character, but she's kind of similar to Tsukasa in that regard, except, Tsukasa's tired because she takes on those duties herself, more or less, and also people see that and kind of admire her for it. Maybe not that itself, but, there was that scene in the first episode where Tsukasa's just super tired, and Saki is like, oh man, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, he says something like, congratulations on a night shift well done, or something.
Yeah, he's very supportive. Meanwhile, Kyrie's always leaving the work on the other two, and, Tuma's there, and he's gonna sympathize with her insofar as being yeah, Kyrie's kind of a dick, huh?
Kyrie.
But
I'll be glad when I is back, because I'll never have to see him again.
But yeah, other than that, Umika doesn't really have a shoulder to lean on.
I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying it as long as it's relevant. No one is taking care of Umika.
Yep. And again...
It's not that it's not that the other Lupin Rangers dislike her or wish her any ill harm. I just don't think they understand what they're doing.
Yeah. No one's doing it on purpose, but yeah, there's a bit of negligence there. Despite the fact that Kyrie does treat her like a child, he also gives her the responsibility of an adult without acknowledging that.
Everyone's teenage years all over again.
So, I think we're gonna get more Umika development in the next episode, if the preview is anything to go by, but Zamiga's and whole thing, or Zamigo rather, just the fact that he is a drifter and he has extensive operations in the human world, so he seems just really important, if not the villain that's going to overshadow Degranio in the end, then someone who's going to be important until the end, because, again, going back to the intro, there's just that scene of him walking away from the city covered in ice. He seems like he has grand plans. And he has connections, and a lot of respect from various ganglars.
I also want to point out, if my theory is correct, that means every time we see a human disguised for a Ganglar, that person used to really exist and look like that. I'm just gonna hope the Ganglars are responsible for the fashion choices and inability to pretend to actually be human. God, every time I think of a Ganglar human disguise, I just think of Labrum's smile. It's like, man, it's the least subtle disguise.
You could not smile any less like a shark, huh? Still not enough information on Kogure to really develop a theory, because all I know is that he apparently prioritizes the Ganglars. I don't know what that might mean in the long run for him. Because, like, I don't know, I feel like if he were really impatient, he'd want them to go after the Pat Rangers a lot. Because they seem like they'd be the bigger threat overall.
Yeah, because if they kill a Ganglar, that piece is destroyed. And gone forever. And Lupin Collection will never be whole again.
Yeah, and also, the Pat Rangers are just other Rangers who are sort of the Lupin Rangers even in a fight. Not entirely, because actually the Lupin Rangers are pretty strong, like Blue holding off 2 Pat Rangers at once. Nonetheless,
if anything, Kogure would want to get those VS changers and VS vehicles and give them to someone else that he has in his pocket.
Yep.
Instead of leaving them in these wildcards.
Yeah, so I can't figure out what he wants from this just yet, but I do just think that that's an important line, him mentioning that the Ganglars are important. I want to try and remember that one.
Any general predictions?
I think anything I had prediction-wise I already mentioned. I think the next episode's going to be an Umika-heavy episode, which, finally.
Finally.
But also, I'm hoping that it does address just Sakia's enthusiasm, and I hope both characters come to an understanding, and that maybe Sakia learns to calm down just ever so slightly, at least in terms of this. Other times, I'm fine with him being excitable, he's cute, but when there is a person who clearly is not immediately reciprocating his feelings, then yeah, maybe tone it down a bit.
Yeah. I feel weird talking about that part of Sakia, because he's clearly not as bad as a lot of other characters in Japanese media that I could mention.
Absolutely, yeah.
But he's still not great, and I don't know if it's like, well, should I cut him some slack because he's not as bad as the bad ones, or should I hold him to the actual standard I would hold people to in real life?
I mean, he's not Master Roshi, but yeah, Umika's not really being subtle. Saki is just very, very bad at picking up on these things. Of course, we won't have to wait that long to see that, or I won't. You've already seen it, so you know the real answer. On the other hand, unless we have anything else to say, everyone else is going to have to wait a week. I guess alternatively, you could also binge watch it as well without waiting for us, but I mean, where's the fun in that?
So with that, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at LRVSPR. I will start looking for Lupin things to retweet, maybe, so that the Twitter's a bit more active. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I am at Lokomasi. Fefner is at Fefner Masamune.
Yeah, and I'm still Halloween themed for a little while longer. Boy, October's almost over. What the fuck?
And if you want to email us, it is LupinRecap@PatReview@gmail.com. Again, email us if you want us to read something, or you want to guest on an episode and we decide to let you on.
Share your existential crises, or just ask a question about the show. Either one's fine.
If you want to just post the lyrics to Fuck the Police, I'll read them out.
Every time.
With certain censoring, because, yeah.
Adieu.